Tonight we're dealing with something older than fear itself, the feeling that the world around you has shifted just slightly, and that something on the other side of that shift is aware of you. These are 3 accounts submitted by viewers, and I've read each one more than once. The third story, I want to say something about the third story. The person who sent it has not been back online since. What they describe in the final paragraph is not something I can explain, and I don't think they can either. Stay with me. The Surveyor's Marker. I work land surveys for a civil engineering firm out of Bozeman, Montana. It's solitary work by nature. You're out in the field for hours at a time, sometimes rough terrain, sometimes private property, sometimes both. By October the days get short fast, and you learn to watch your light. This was a Tuesday in early October, 2021. I was running a boundary survey on a 40-acre parcel about 11 miles east of Livingston, off a 2-track road that barely showed up on Google Maps. Dry grass. Scrub pine. Old fence line. The kind of land that doesn't ask you to stay. I'd been out there maybe 3 hours when I found the first marker. Not one of mine. It was a wooden stake, not the standard orange-capped aluminum pin we use, and not anything I'd seen another firm use either. Rough cut. Maybe 18 inches tall. Driven hard into the ground. No flagging, no cap, no notation. Just a stake. I took a photo and kept working. Surveyors find old markers all the time. It didn't mean anything. I found the second one 20 minutes later. Same type. Same height. And then a third, a fourth. They were forming a line, running parallel to the boundary I was shooting, about 30 feet inside the property. Spaced evenly. Precisely evenly, actually. I paced them out. 14 feet, give or take an inch, every time. There were 11 stakes total. I finished my work and drove back toward Livingston, and I kept thinking about the spacing. 14 feet is not a standard survey measurement. It's not a fence post interval. It didn't correspond to anything in the legal description of the property. When I got back to the office, I mentioned it to my supervisor. He pulled up the parcel history. The land had been in one family since 1964. No permitted structures, no recorded easements, no prior survey work on file except an original boundary from 1971. I pulled up the photos I'd taken on my phone. The stakes were there in the first picture. In the second picture, shot maybe 4 minutes later from a different angle, I could see the same stretch of ground in the background. The stakes weren't there. I went back out the following Saturday. My own time. I told myself I just wanted to understand. I found the line of stakes exactly where I'd measured them. Still precise. Still 14 feet apart. I crouched down next to the first one and looked at it closely, and that's when I noticed the ground around the base. The soil wasn't disturbed. There were no compression marks, no displaced grass, no sign that anything had been pushed into the earth. It looked like the stake had grown there. I pulled out my measuring wheel and ran the line. 11 stakes, 14 feet apart. 140 feet total. I wrote it down in my field notebook. I don't know why, habit, I guess. I was walking back to my truck when I turned around one last time. There was a 12th stake now. At the far end of the line, past where I'd started. I had walked right past that spot 20 minutes earlier. I drove home. I didn't go back. The property sold in March of 2022. I ran the title search as part of my job. New owners, out-of-state buyers, listed as a private hunting parcel. I never told them what I found. I thought about that a lot. Some things leave a mark on the land long after the person who made them is gone. She came every morning at 4:47. Last winter I was living alone in a rental house in Duluth, Minnesota, one of those old craftsman bungalows on the hill above the lake. I'd moved there for a job with a shipping logistics company, remote work mostly, and I didn't know many people in the city yet. December through February up there is about as isolated as you can get without actually being isolated. I started noticing the woman in mid-December. I'm a light sleeper. Always have been. I'd gotten into the habit of checking my phone when I woke up in the night, not looking at anything, just confirming the time, then putting it back down. Sometime around the 12th or 13th, I woke up and checked. 4:47 a.m. I heard footsteps on the sidewalk below my bedroom window. Not alarming, people walk at odd hours. I live 2 blocks from a 24-hour gas station. I didn't think about it. But I woke up again the following night. Checked my phone. 4:47. The footsteps again. Slower this time. I got up and looked out the window. A woman in a long coat, moving east along the sidewalk. Grey coat or pale blue, hard to tell under the streetlight. She didn't look up. I went back to sleep. By the 3rd night, I was waiting for it. Which is a strange thing to admit. I don't know why I didn't just sleep through it. But I'd wake up, always a minute or two before 4:47, and lie there in the dark, listening for the sound of her walking. She was always there. Always the same direction. Always the same pace. I started watching from the window. Same coat. Same unhurried walk. She never varied her route, never carried anything, never looked up at the houses. She moved the way someone moves when they're counting steps. This went on for 6 weeks. In late January I mentioned it to my landlord, a retired man named Gerald who'd lived in Duluth his whole life. I described the woman, the time, the route. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, very carefully, that the woman I was describing sounded like it could be Margaret Voss. That she'd lived in my house before me. That she'd passed away in February of the previous year. I told him that wasn't possible. He said she used to walk every morning. Couldn't sleep. He said she always went east on Arrowhead, past the Lutheran church, down toward the lake. I didn't sleep well after that. On February 8th, I know the date because I wrote it down, I woke up at 4:46 and waited. The footsteps came. I looked out the window. She stopped. Direct below my window. She stood there for a long moment. And then, slowly, she turned her face up toward me. I couldn't see her features clearly. The light was wrong. Or maybe the light was fine and something else was wrong. I stepped back from the window. I stood in the middle of my bedroom in the dark with my heart doing something I couldn't fully track. When I looked again, she was gone. She didn't come back after that. Every morning I wake up around 4:45 and listen, and the sidewalk is quiet. I've told myself it was a neighbor. A different woman. A coincidence of timing and suggestion and a landlord who shouldn't have said what he said. But I keep thinking about the way she turned. It wasn't the movement of someone who'd noticed a light go on, or heard glass against a window frame. It was the movement of someone who already knew I was there. The next story was sent to me by a couple in Virginia, and what unsettles me most is not what they saw, it's what was already there when they arrived. What was in the listing photos? My wife and I were house hunting in central Virginia, Fluvanna County, about 40 minutes outside Charlottesville. Spring of 2023. We'd been looking for months. We both worked from home, we had a dog, we wanted land and space and quiet. We thought we knew what we were looking for. The house came up on a Friday afternoon. 3 bedrooms, a converted barn, 11 acres, listed below market. The listing photos were fine, good natural light, hardwood floors, a big kitchen. The kind of house that photographs well. We scheduled a showing for Sunday. Saturday night I was looking at the photos again on my laptop, just walking through them the way you do, getting a feel for the layout. I'd looked at these same photos twice already. I was on the one of the master bedroom. Wood paneling, a south-facing window, afternoon light coming through. I almost didn't see it. In the mirror above the dresser, a tall rectangular mirror, slightly angled, you could see the reflection of the doorway behind the photographer. And standing in that doorway was a figure. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because I've thought about it a lot since. It wasn't a reflection of a person standing in the room. The photographer would have been visible too, in that case. It was just a figure, standing in the doorway that the mirror was angled toward. Tall. The posture was what got me. Not standing the way a person stands when they're idle or waiting. Standing like they were placed there. Deliberate. Facing in. I showed my wife. She looked at it for a long time. She said, "Let's still go." We went to the showing on Sunday. The listing agent was a cheerful woman named Diane who'd been selling in the county for 15 years. The house smelled like old wood and dried lavender. I liked it immediately, which felt wrong after what I'd seen. I found the bedroom. The mirror was still there. I positioned myself in the doorway and looked at the angle. Yes, I would have been visible from the camera's position. Whatever the photographer captured in that reflection, they were not standing in the doorway at the time. I asked Diane how long the house had been vacant. She said about 8 months. The previous owner had moved to assisted living. I asked if anyone else had been in and out of the property. Contractors, inspectors, anyone. She said no. Just her, for the listing shoot. I asked who took the photos. She smiled and said she did. Always does her own photos. Then she said, "Why?" I showed her the photo on my phone. The mirror. The figure in the doorway. Diane looked at it for a long time. Long enough that I noticed. Then she said, very quietly, that she hadn't seen that when she was there. We didn't make an offer. We drove back to our rental in Charlottesville without talking much. That night I pulled up the listing again to look at the photo. The listing had been updated. New photos. The bedroom was there, same angle, same afternoon light. The mirror was gone. I don't know if Diane went back to reshoot it, or if she had the mirror removed, or if something else happened. I saved the original photo. I still have it on my phone. We found a different house, 2 counties over, in August. It's fine. It's good, actually. But there are nights I open that photo and look at the figure in the doorway, the way it's standing, the deliberate stillness of it, and I think about the 8 months that house was empty. And I wonder what it was doing there. All that time. Alone. Waiting, maybe, for someone to finally look. 3 accounts. 3 different corners of this country. And in each one, something was present that had no invitation and gave no explanation. I think about the surveyor going back a second time. I think about that impulse to return to the thing that frightened you, as if understanding it would make it smaller. It never does. If you've ever been somewhere, a house, a stretch of land, a room you were supposed to be alone in, and felt, with total certainty, that you were not, I want to hear about it. Leave it in the comments. I read every one. New stories arrive here every day. Subscribe if you want them. The listing for that house in Fluvanna County was taken down in September of 2023. As of the time I'm recording this, it has not been relisted.